Okay, now let's look at full limiting reactant problems in which we're not only going to find the limiting reactant, but we are going to then answer the problem. So in this case, we got 4.1 grams of the chromium and 9.3 grams of chlorine gas, and we want to know how much of this we're going to make. And of course we have to decide which one of those will be limiting. So first we're going to go to moles. So 4.1 grams times 1 mole over 52 grams for the chromium equals 0.0788 moles of chromium and 9.3 grams times 1 mole over, we're going to use 71 since we've got 2 chlorines. It's closer to 35.5. You know, if we only got one, we can just use 35 because it's 35.453, but when you got 2 of them, it's closer to 71. So that's my rule for chlorine, and that comes out to be 0.0131 moles of Cl2. Alright, so now that we've done that, we have to figure out using the 2 to 3. So again, we're going to start with our chromium and then using these for our mole ratio. We're going to start with the chromium, which was the 0.0788, and then the mole ratio, because we want to find out how much chlorine we would need to use up all of that chromium. So the mole ratio will be 3/2, which will give me 0.118 moles of Cl2 needed. Now, I have 0.131 moles of chlorine 2. This says I needed 0.118, so I have more than I need. So we have enough, and therefore the chromium is limiting. Now that's where we stopped on the last paper, but now we're going to go ahead and finish the problem. We now know to use the chromium, and so we're going to use our 0.0788 moles. We already did the step 1 for stoichiometry of turning it into moles. Now the mole ratio, but the mole ratio will involve the chromium chloride, so we have to use the 2/2, and that'll take care of the mole ratio step. And then we want to find out the mass, so that'll be in grams, and so 100 and let's see, I use 158.5 grams per 1 mole. Again, I'm using 35.5 for chlorine since I have 3 of them. And so there's my third step to go back to grams, and I end up with 12.5 grams of CrCl3 produced. So again, note that we started with turning them both into moles, then we did the limiting reactant step, and then the one that's limiting is the one we then use to do our stoichiometry problem. We're already in moles, so we've done our step 1. There's our mole ratio question over what we're using, and then going back to grams. Okay, let's go ahead and do one more. We have 31.5 grams of sulfur 8, and we have 8.65 grams of O2, and of course we want to know how much SO2 are we going to produce. So 31.5 grams times 1 mole over 256 grams, 8 sulfurs, 8 times 32, gives me 0.123 moles of S8. And then for the O2, we have 8.65 moles times 1 mole over 32 grams, and that's 0.270 moles of O2. Now, please note that even though there were a lot more grams here than here, the O2 actually has more moles than over here, but we have to use our mole ratio. So if we take the 0.123 moles of the sulfur times, and in this case, to compare our reactants, we're going to have 8 over 1. Again, since we're starting with this one, the one we want to find out about is the O2, so it's 8 over 1, which gives me 0.984 moles of O2 needed. We only have 0.27, so not enough, and therefore the O2 is limiting. So the O2 is the one that we have to use to find out how much sulfur we have. So we take our 0.270 moles. The mole ratio for the SO2 compared to the O2 is 8 to 8. And then we want to go to grams, so that's 64, 32, and 32. So 64 grams per mole. Again, go to moles, mole ratio, then go back to grams, and we get 17.3 grams of SO2 produced. And there's our answer for number 2. So this shows you how to do the problems. Again, go to moles for both of them. Do your mole ratio between the reactants to find out which one's limiting. If you have enough, then the other one is limiting. If you don't have enough, then that one is limiting. And then use the limiting one with your mole ratio for the product to the limiting one. And then go back to the desired units, in this case grams, to find our answer. So the rest of the problems should look just like these two. And go ahead and finish the rest as homework.